We're delighted to be taking part again in Digital Leaders Week, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. Before we get into the main content and speak with our partners and colleagues around the specific challenge around travel choices, I'd just like to start by providing a little context about our Smart City journey, some of our projects and achievements to date, and what we believe are the key ingredients that have contributed to some of our successes.
30 of the city leaders representing the health, the education and the business sectors, and for a 2-day workshop to think about our digital ambitions, the pain points, the barriers to achieving some of these, and to set out our collective smart city vision and priorities. And we all agreed that next generation connectivity, both wired and wireless, was pivotal to put in place that underlying infrastructure to deliver a whole range of citywide transformational use cases. Also extremely important to us in our locality and with the communities we serve was to ensure that throughout our journey, we leave no one and nowhere behind. We then reached out to the marketplace and we consulted with a wide range of operators, providers, suppliers and consultancies. And what we found was that we didn't really appear on any people's roadmaps. Sunderland just wasn't a place that was attracting investment on its own. So we knew that as a partnership, we would need to intervene to achieve our ambitions. We developed our layered approach to achieving our vision, and we did that at the beginning of our journey, and it really has stood us in good stead ever since. It starts with that all-important connectivity, which is just a means to an end, but it's incredibly difficult to do anything without it. So we now have an ultra-fast free Wi-Fi network in key locations within the city with some of the fastest download speeds in the country. And this has enabled us to provide social benefits, connecting 2 of our social housing tower block community rooms and one of our primary schools situated in one of our most deprived wards in the city. And where previously speeds were so poor that children couldn't even download a YouTube clip in a classroom. We have Virgin Media, we have Netomnia and we have City Fibre now all working in our city, providing citywide capable fibre connectivity, and that will reach over 95% of our premises. And that's totaled an investment for us in excess of £85 million. We also have our first private 5G network now live in the city, supporting a DCMS sponsored project. And in September 2021, we signed a 20-year partnership with a company called BAI Communications, and that's to build advanced wireless networks in our city. And by the summer of this year, we'll have the first of our network of networks in place, a much expanded free ultra-fast Wi-Fi footprint, a 5G private network in our city centre, and a citywide low-power, long-range wide area network. We've also been making significant progress in terms of the second layer there on our model, in terms of the sensors and the applications. So we now have an assistive technology strategy that's core to our model of social care delivery. We have over 2,200 homes now benefiting from a range of different sensors that's helping to keep our elderly and vulnerable residents safe and well at home. We've developed a data platform for family members and practitioners to view the data, presenting patterns of behaviour and able to be configured to deliver alerts. We've deployed a number of video and motion sensors, monitoring traffic, cycle and pedestrian flows and movements, and that's now linked into the Urban Traffic Management Centre and allows real-time interventions as well as longer-term urban planning. We are currently deploying a range of air quality sensors to over 30 locations in the city, and we're working up a number of environmental proposals at the moment, including smart bins and flood management and monitoring. And finally, to support our net zero ambitions, we're really pleased to partner with Digital Catapult, delivering 2 really important challenges, one relating to building emissions and the other relating to transport choices, which I'll leave for our experts to explain here in a little more detail. But the next layer there is really important to us, and that's the all-important data. And data really does form a massively important layer for us, and the ability to monitor data. Yes, in respect of individual use cases, which we've been doing to date, but really importantly now, the ability to bring various data sources together from those core applications, from sensors, from open data sources, and to present this where appropriate to an operations centre to support the real-time management of the city, as well as informing and supporting longer-term strategic planning. This aspect of work, it's definitely work in progress as we develop our smart use cases and applications, but our partnership with a company called Connexon is already starting to deliver some early benefits for us, and it's supporting some of our multi-agency operations. But ultimately, it is about that top layer and delivering those all-important outcomes so that we can better serve our residents, our businesses, and the people that come to visit our city and deliver better outcomes for everybody. For us, it's about delivering an all-encompassing smart city with the right underpinning connectivity so that we can deliver that whole range of really transformational use cases across all verticals, and ensure that we support all of that with initiatives covering digital education and skills, digital enterprise, and again, leaving no one and nowhere behind, digital inclusion as well. So what's added to our success to date? Well, we believe it's about having that holistic partnership that all of our city partners have signed up to across the education, the health and the business sectors, and about having that shared vision, but that vision that's relevant to us here in Sunderland, to our localities, to our communities, and that's really guided our work well to date. We believe it's about having very strong digital leadership with leaders that truly understand the benefits and opportunities afforded by digital investment. And for us, really importantly, it's been about developing a really rich and diverse ecosystem. And we absolutely knew at the beginning of our journey that we couldn't do this on our own. We've got benefits afforded by large global infrastructure partners such as BAI Communications, and we've been working really closely with people like Connected Places Catapult and Digital Catapult for some time now. And we've always valued the contribution that our SMEs have made to our journey to date and will continue to make as we move further forward.
And on that note, I'll hand over to Dylan from Nebula Labs to tell you about our Travel Choices Challenge to support our net zero ambitions.
Hi there, everyone. This is really weird. I don't know if I should wave or not because that's sort of a Zoom custom, isn't it? But I've got real people as well. So I'm Dylan Mckee. I'm co-founder of Nebula Labs, and we're a software house based up in Newcastle. And we do work kind of across the Northeast region as well. We're a team of 6 people, and we focus primarily on mobile app development. But we also have kind of other interests in some sort of smarter city tech and some AI tech, which I'm going to talk about today as well. So essentially, we saw this open call for basically a smart city challenge to basically come and do some smart city work down in Sunderland. And as soon as we saw it, we instantly thought that we had a really strong kind of product that we could bring down and adapt and run down in Sunderland and gather some really interesting data and insights from. So the background to this is we did some work a few years ago for the UK's largest business park, Global Business Park, which is again in the Northeast. And one of the challenges that they highlighted as being kind of a major issue was the availability of travel survey data. So they had all these employees who commute to the business park every day, and they needed to know how they got there for planning purposes, for sustainability purposes, for reporting purposes to the council and the authorities, but they couldn't really do it in an efficient way. And the best they ever got to was transforming a form that was on paper to a form that was online that they sent out once a year. It cost a few £1,000s every year to send around this form, even in digital format, and then they had to collate the results, and they were basically always a year out of how people were actually travelling, which particularly these days is quite a long time, because you think how you're travelling to work in February 2021 versus February 2022, it's probably quite different. So that was obviously quite a big challenge, and we set out to solve it with them. We were given kind of a completely open slate, and we went to a local partner, went to Newcastle University, who we've got a link with them and the National Innovation Centre for Data. And we said to them, if we built an app and we gathered this data, could you guys come in and plug in where we aren't as strong, and could you help us develop this algorithm? So the algorithm basically was to essentially do the ticking of the boxes, if you like, in a travel survey. So we were building the app that actually gathered the data, and then the algorithm essentially ticks the right box depending on how you're traveling. So it looks at the data that you've collected on our app and says, does it look like you've traveled mostly via this mode bus, for example, or this mode metro, or a combination of the two? And it can also apply kind of precedence between the two. So we trialed it down at Cobalt Business Park for 6 weeks with a team of kind of 60 testers down there, employees in the business park and people who run the business park, and then took that data to the National Innovation Centre for Data. And they spent about 4 months coming up with this algorithm that we could then kind of incorporate into an app eventually. And that was kind of phase 1, if you like. And then as soon as we saw this open call from Sunderland, we thought, well, this is a great opportunity to bring this technology not just to a business park, but to an entire city, and to see like how that could be applied and scaled up from helping like a fairly small number of users and a fairly small install base to potentially a whole city and potentially a whole kind of region as well. And the impact of the project that we had down at the business park was that we gathered over 700 data points, so 700 different journeys to analyze, to build this algorithm off. We got to the point with the university where we were getting accuracy levels between 80% and 96%. So we were really pleased with that, because if we've got a 4 in 5 to 4.95 in chance of getting the right transport mode, then that's really good. And if we can do that automatically and at scale, then we can do that to a point where we have so much data that we're really pushing towards that top end. So we were really pleased with that, and we thought, like, if we were to apply that to a city scale, that would work really well. So yeah, the accuracy, as I mentioned, we were really impressed with. As soon as we saw this challenge, we thought, yes, we've got this product, we've got this good solution, but applying it to a city is going to have kind of some challenges, but also present some opportunities. So the challenges and opportunities that we saw within this were, we had to achieve a useful MVP in a limited budget and timescale to basically prove that it's useful to a city before we look at scaling it up to actual residents and end users. We wanted to obviously gather more data to develop the accuracy of our algorithm. So not only just to run it on this data, but also see how we could use this data to improve it and get that 80% more towards 96%. And we also saw a really good opportunity in this challenge where we thought, like, we've got all this data and we're working out how people are traveling, but we're not doing anything to change people's behavior at the minute. But we thought with this challenge, we could incorporate rewards and incorporate like an earning structure. So the more sustainably you travel and the more kind of public transport usage you have versus private transport, the more you get rewarded, and you get rewards that you can then spend locally. So it's quite a nice kind of local ecosystem thing. And it just encourages good behavior between people kind of commuting into the city, choosing better modes of transport, and then spending the money on local things as well. So the solution that we had was basically to take the tried and tested mobile app that we've trialed down at the business park, and then obviously we've got the success of that trial. We know that the core functionality of the app works, and then take that into a form where it could be used by testers in Sunderland at a slightly bigger scale, obviously, and then tie in this reward structure. So the idea is that instantly after doing a journey, you get rewarded for it, and depending on how that journey went, you get different levels of reward. And then you can spend those rewards, which come as kind of points, on something. So, you know, like a discount or a competition entry, or even like a charitable donation. So it was basically tying together a couple of existing technologies and taking it to a much wider audience and a much wider scale. And the idea was that at the end of the journey, you classify the journey on how you went, so we can see how good the algorithm is, basically. So we can say, well, we predicted you're on a metro, you said you're on a metro, that's 100% for that journey. Or you said you're on a bus, but we thought you were actually in a car, so that's a miss. Or there's also the opportunity for multimodal, where we can say you said you were in a bus and a car, and we thought you were in a bus and a metro. So we've got like 50% accuracy there. So the algorithm that we came up with the university initially basically revolves in data points being ran through a multi-label classification algorithm. So that was basically the first time we ran it. It was done as a one-off job. So we gathered all this data in a couple of months, took maybe a month to brief the project, and then spent a couple of months actually running it through their algorithm kind of separately and offline. They were quite distinct parts. The real challenge that we faced when we came to this project was that we had to run it as kind of one stream. So as soon as you gather the data, it has to be analyzed immediately. It's not like an offline analysis piece. There's a lot more kind of integration between the two, if that makes sense, and a lot more like need to run it live. So I'm just going to talk about like the three phases that we saw, which were kind of the major phases of the project and how they went and what opportunities lie as a result of them. So initially we've got the discovery. So we held, obviously we came to the discovery with a technical view, saying, yeah, you need a mobile app, we know that. We've got this pre-existing algorithm as a basis. We want to combine the algorithm with a rewards point system, and we want to allow those points to be spent on rewards kind of that you guys can think of as a council. And we also want to allow you to export data and analyze data. And that was kind of the core requirements, if you like, that the council had. They were then able to come to us with a different perspective, with a transport focus, to say that's really good and that sounds really interesting, but as urban planners, as kind of transport experts, have you thought about this? This is the kind of stuff that we want to know. So looking at how we can tie in third-party data sets, so your weather data sets, your transport provider data sets, and also looking at like how the data can be used in different ways that we haven't really thought of as a tech company. So the ability to see how people actually travel to somewhere. So almost like how Google can do a reverse image search and tell you what's in an image. We wanted to be able to say, how do people actually get to this point generally? So you could put in the city hall today and you could see that maybe like 2/3 of us came in the car and a 6 came on the metro and a 6 came in on bus or something like that. So that was something that was really innovative in terms of our thinking and was really disruptive, because we obviously knew the algorithm well, but didn't have the kind of urban planning experience to think, actually, we've got the data that would feed that, but we don't have the experience, the knowledge for that. So that was a really good collaboration. And finally, like the gamification of it. So the council were really interested in how we could like gamify it further, and how we could not just do rewards, but also have like almost like a social capital to it, and kind of make you the best in your friendship group or the best in your class if you're in a school or a college, for commuting the most sustainably and walking the most. So we started development, and we took basically a few existing items and brought them together, and we faced quite a few challenges in doing so, to be honest. So the biggest challenge that we faced was what I went back to kind of previously, what I mentioned, was that the algorithm that we were working with had been developed by the university to be run kind of offline, so as a separate like chunk of time to the data collection chunk of time. So they were very distinct kind of phases, if you like, in the previous system. So what we've had to do is move that to the cloud, which has been really quite tough to get that to work quickly enough. So at first we were seeing it taking like literally 10 minutes from you putting a journey in to getting a result back, which, you know, if you're an end user, isn't really good enough compared to how quickly it is that you're rewarded for doing pretty much anything in any other kind of scenario on a phone. So that was like an instant like technical challenge that we saw, and we've managed to get it down to 30 seconds now. We're currently doing some work in the background to get it down further, and to get it down hopefully within 5 or 10 seconds, which we should be able to move on to shortly, as I'll move on to the kind of the future developments. But that's kind of like the big technical hurdle that we've had here. So we haven't really been able to gather much data yet. We've mostly been focused on like solving these technical challenges and just making sure that they're done in kind of the right way, and a way where we can kind of scale it up to a larger user base as well. So yeah, looking at future plans and the future phases for the project, the kind of opportunities that we see here are immediately, obviously, the speeding up of this algorithm. So just making it so that it's a better user experience, it's much more modern and much more like acceptable to people who are used to sending a tweet that takes a second. It's not going to take minutes to get results back and get rewarded for. We're going to trial with the council and then a wider group. We've got a 4-week test window ahead to actually gather this data, and then we've got a testing and iteration phase after that, where we're going to work with the urban planning team to look at the insights that we can actually pull out for them. So going back to what I mentioned before, the reverse image search, but for location, if you like, that is a really clever insight. And we feel like once we've got this data gathered, there's going to be more of those that we can chat through with the council as well. And there's going to be quite an interesting set of insights that come out of this. So it's actually a really exciting time. I'm really looking forward to it. And then bigger picture, going back to one of the council's other requests, the gamification, we were thinking like a leaderboard strategy would work really well there. So almost like where you climb and fall on the leaderboard, maybe on like a weekly basis or a monthly basis, and you could add friends by like a friend code or something, or you could join like a group or a class. Integration with transport providers. So we had a really interesting sort of thought there on, obviously Uber does surge pricing where you get the price increased because of demand. But what if we did reverse surge pricing on public transport? So if public transport was quite quiet, what if we could offer you a metro ticket for 20p instead of £2, something like that? And it would become a much more like attractive option. We could use our technology to know that it was happening live, and that the metro was quiet or the bus network was quiet at the time. And then essentially that's like an underused public resource. So getting 20p for a journey is better than getting nothing for a journey. And it's encouraging someone to take that instead of taking their car potentially, or even if it gets them to do that instead of walking, it's still a public transport use. Like roadwork data sets as well. So looking at kind of how frustrated people get if there's roadworks on, and whether that changes their behavior and makes them take a different kind of transport mode. And also the kind of the how busy is that bus sort of strategy. So at the minute, bus providers have started putting that into their own app and their own technologies, but it's very manual. You have to report manually. If we were to automate that using our algorithm, we could probably really accurately tell how busy transport networks are. And that would be really interesting in terms of obviously COVID awareness, letting people know that it's safe to travel at certain times, and particularly like vulnerable groups knowing that it's safe for them to travel at certain hours of the day. I think that's kind of everything, but it's been a really good experience to collaborate with the council. They've brought an awful lot to the table in terms of totally different perspectives and different perspectives on the same data, which has been really interesting. I think there's some really good future opportunities, both immediately and bigger picture. I think there's some really exciting stuff there. And yeah, just thanks for everyone's time, and thanks for Software City for facilitating as well.
Thank you, Dylan, for that really insightful presentation. We're now going to go back to Dylan and pose a few questions.
Hi, I'm Dylan Mckee. I'm the co-founder of Nebula Labs. So it was a really interesting opportunity where we were able to bring an existing technology that we developed with a smaller partner previously to a much bigger scale. So we were really excited about being able to address potentially a whole council workforce at first, and then eventually a whole council area. So the scale that the council brought was really good, and also the different backgrounds. So we're technology experts, but we're not transport and planning experts. The council were able to bring their urban planners on board and their infrastructure experts on board to discuss kind of how the data could be applied on a level that was in like ways that we just hadn't thought of really. So looking at how it could be used for urban planning, for transport planning, and in loads of really kind of novel ways. So we see loads of potential in scaling the solution in terms of user base. So initially from a small team in the council, potentially to the whole council, and then potentially to partners like schools in the community and colleges in the community, that kind of thing. So in terms of user base and kind of data gathering scale, huge potential there. And also we see a lot of potential for scaling certain parts of it, like the gamification aspect. I know the council are really keen to explore stuff like leaderboards, and also plugging into other third parties like transport providers in the region, and also data sets like the roadwork data set that they hold as well. So working with the council is going to be a real benefit there, because they own all this data or have access to it all, so we can really tap into it to make them get a better solution.
We hope you've really enjoyed our presentation today, and to keep up to date with what's happening in Sunderland, please visit our website at sunderlandoursmartcity.com.